What I would like to do is share with you a simple, scalable, repeatable process for driving high levels of engagement, retention, and performance, whether you're talking about on the individual level or for an entire organization. And this four-step process is not only very effective, it can save organizations dozens, if not hundreds of man-hours per year. So the first step is that we as leaders need to clarify and be constantly reminded of what our true job is. The true job of a leader is simply this: to inspire greatness in our teams, right? To inspire people to do great work and be great human beings. Those two things have to go together. Now, this may sound like some lofty aspiration, like, oh, only a natural-born leader can inspire greatness in others, right? That's not true. This is a very simple process. It's not easy to do, but it's simple. And it's almost, this term, inspiring greatness, is almost a perfect synonym for inspiring engagement, right? Engaged team members are the ones doing great work, going the extra mile, loving their work. This is our job as leaders, to inspire engagement. Now, unfortunately, most junior managers, when they're first promoted into management, don't know this, right? They get promoted. Why? Because they're really good at their jobs, right? They're the star performer. And that's why they get promoted. And then they show up thinking, that's the way I'm going to lead, is I'll just continue working hard. Unfortunately, there is almost zero correlation between being a star performer and being a good leader. In some cases, there's a negative correlation. Now, senior leaders know this. If we've been around a while, we know that ultimately our top priority is to inspire greatness in our teams. That's our job. Perhaps tied with strategy, but you can't, who's going to execute on a strategy if teams aren't engaged? The first step that we need to take is to undo the conditioning that we've all been exposed to that makes us subconsciously believe that our most important task is to just execute on the tasks in front of us, whatever seems urgent, to hit the goals, to focus on numbers. This is very natural, and we've been conditioned like this our entire lives. To give you an example of how powerful this type of conditioning can be, I'll use kind of an unrelated example, but I'm sure it's something we can all relate to. Whether it's a car, which is an example I'll use, or maybe meeting somebody with a name that you haven't heard before, or buying some new watch or something, I'm sure we've all had this experience, right? Where you buy a new car, and prior to buying that car, you never really noticed it anywhere, right? And then literally the day after you buy it, you just see this thing everywhere, right? Now, why is this? And there's a couple explanations. Maybe you're really cool, right? And you bought the car, everyone heard you had it, and they're like, I got to get that car too. It's certainly possible, particularly if you're an egomaniac. But I think there's a more realistic explanation, which is there's areas of the brain, and I think neuroscience has identified, they call it the reticular formation or reticular activating system. And these areas of the brain are responsible for filtering out information that we subconsciously believe is not important. Now, this is a very important task because apparently, as humans, we're exposed and our brain is receiving 11 million bits of information per second. But our conscious mind can only handle about 60 to 90 bits of information. So if we were to have to consciously process even a fraction of those 11 million bits, our brains would probably shut down. We might go crazy or something. So it's extremely important that these areas of the brain filter out unimportant information. However, there is a negative side effect. When we subconsciously believe that something is not important, we are literally blind to seeing it. That car that you bought, it was there the whole time, but you literally did not see it because your brain didn't think it was important. And this applies the same to leadership. If subconsciously, due to our conditioning, we believe that our primary job is to execute on tasks, hit numbers, hit goals, then we are literally blind to opportunities to help our team members to thrive, to do great work, to be great human beings. And we're also blind to opportunities where we can improve in this area. So here's what I recommend as a practical first step to undoing this conditioning. And it is to simply change your job description if you're a leader. Now, I don't mean going to HR and asking formally to have your job description changed. For some of you, that would be going to yourself. What I mean here is imagine you have your job description, right? Go ahead and print that up, and at the top of it, just add the term at the top, additional responsibilities, okay? Now, I want you to print up a new piece of paper, and it reads something like this. My job is to inspire greatness in my team by serving as a coach who helps people to thrive. both professionally and personally, if you want to add that in there. That is our primary job as leaders. Everything else on our job description should be additional responsibilities. And what I recommend is we print this up, have it someplace where we can see it, and review it multiple times every day. Because the more that we remind ourselves of this, the more that subconsciously we start to remember and believe that this is, in fact, our primary job as leaders. And little by little, this can affect behaviors in little ways, change our subconscious belief to now we start operating from this wisdom that our primary jobs as leaders is to inspire greatness in our teams. And when we start operating from this wisdom more often, there's a very logical second step to this process that follows. And that is, we need to identify what do people need to thrive at work, right? What do people need to be great? And oftentimes when I say this, the first ideas that come to people's minds are, oh, you mean we should have ice cream socials on Fridays or a foosball table in the office? And that's not what I'm talking about here. As a general rule, perks do not work for driving sustainable engagement. They do work for attracting talent. I'm sure many of you are aware of that. They can also help in terms of employee satisfaction. But I want to make a very clear distinction here. Employee satisfaction and employee engagement are two different things. Employee satisfaction can help with employee engagement, but not necessarily. You could imagine a scenario where you have a company full of people who are very satisfied. They love how cool the office is. They love the perks. But nobody's really coaching them to be great, not a whole lot of accountability, and they're just kind of skating by being mediocre. And guess what? They're not going to leave, right? They're very happy where they're at with all of their great perks. This is actually bad for an organization. This is how we can build a culture of mediocrity, and a culture of mediocrity repels talented people like kryptonite. A talented person shows up for an interview and spots 5 out of 6 people being mediocre, they're gone. They don't want anything to do with that organization. So what we need to be focused on are simple, practical needs that people have for actually thriving, both professionally and personally. And fortunately for us, there are 14 needs that are core to thriving at work that just so happen to be universal, meaning they apply to almost every human being in almost every work environment. And they're very simple, practical things like feeling appreciated, having clear performance expectations, receiving frequent, helpful feedback, and even excellence is one of these needs. We all have a need to feel like we are good or even great at what we do. Nobody wants to be mediocre. Have you ever met a person in your life who wakes up in the morning and says, today, I would like to be mediocre? And not just today, but every day for the rest of my life. Have you ever met a person who says that? Never. And yet, we see mediocre people everywhere, don't we? Unfortunately. Not in this room, though, right? This room, there are 0 mediocre people. So how does this happen? It's because bad habits are easy to form. Good habits are very hard to form. Let's just take running, for example. Let's say I want to run a marathon. What's easier for me to do? Jump up out of bed first thing in the morning, put my shoes on, and go run 3 miles? Or reach over to my alarm clock and hit snooze? Not only is it easier to do that, but it feels really nice, doesn't it? That extra time, everyone brags about, oh, that extra 10 minutes of sleep. That's the best thing ever. It's almost like a drug, right? So it's like, it's so much easier. We get this immediate feedback of, oh, that's really nice. It's really nice to do the thing that's going to prevent me from feeling good about myself in the long term. And this is how it happens, right? It's so easy to develop habits that prevent us from doing what we really want to do. It's extremely hard to develop habits that allow us to be great. And this is a huge opportunity for leaders. Why? Because if we view ourselves as a coach and we're helping people develop those good habits, coaching them to be great, we are meeting a core need people have that many people find challenging, if not all of us. All of us have habits that we form that are preventing us from being as great as we could be. And having a coach that helps us get beyond those habits and remove obstacles to our success is absolutely invaluable. So this is a huge opportunity for leaders. However, the motivation here is essential because there are 2 ways of going about this, right? Let's imagine a selfish leader. Of course they demand performance from their team, right? We want high levels of performance and accountability. Why do they want it? Well, because I want a promotion. I want more money. I want to look good. That's the motivation. There's an energy that is associated with that motivation. And that energy is palpable. People can feel it, and it is repulsive. Nobody wants to work for a leader like that, at least not for very long. Now, we look at a leader who truly cares about people. They want high levels of performance too. They want their people to be great at work, to be great human beings, but the motivation is very different. They don't want it so they can look good as the leader or get a promotion or make more money. They know that's what's best for the individual. Right? If we allow a person to be consistently mediocre, that's not serving them. We are setting them up for pain. They're going to not feel good about themselves. They're eventually going to have to go play on another team. They're probably going to go be terrible there and get fired from that team. That's not what we do if we care about somebody. If we truly care, we do what we can to help that person to thrive, professionally and personally. We remove roadblocks. We help them overcome habits. So great leaders don't demand performance. They inspire it. Not for themselves, but because that's what's best for the individual. Now, the next step here in this process is that we need to get feedback on how well we are meeting these needs. We need to be continuously asking questions like, how can I serve you better? Or maybe a similar variation of this is, how can I better help you to thrive? And it is absolutely essential that we as leaders get this feedback. We all have blind spots. We all have these areas where we don't know that we lack in our ability to meet these needs. Now, this is where it's a bit of a challenge, as I'm sure you're aware, because many team members, individual contributors, don't want to tell their managers directly to their face, hey, you're a terrible listener. Right? They don't want to give constructive feedback. Even when there's really strong relationships, there's some reluctance to give leaders the feedback that we really need. So we need to have an anonymous mechanism for team members to give feedback. And this is where most organizations run into a big problem. The survey process that we tend to use in many organizations often makes things worse. Here's how it happens. So we do a big annual survey, right, on employee engagement. There's 80 questions on this thing. It takes employees 20 to 30 minutes to fill it out. So for one, they're kind of annoyed. They're like, man, you just took 20 minutes of my life to do a survey. I hope something happens, right? And then because we get so much data, often it takes a month or more just to make meaning out of all the data. Then it takes a couple months after that to come up with a plan, sometimes 3 to 6 months or longer, to come up for a plan for how we're going to address all these issues. We asked 80 questions. We're deficient in 55 of these areas, right? How are we going to address all this? And all the while, employees are losing confidence in leadership. They're losing trust. They're wondering, why did you waste my time with a survey if you're not going to do anything about the feedback that I gave you? They don't see all the work going on behind the scenes. So there's a much better way to do this. And what I recommend is that our foundation for feedback is creating what I call this virtuous cycle, where employees they're giving feedback on a frequent basis, they're feeling heard immediately, and they're seeing action happening within a matter of days of the survey closing. Now, I know that might seem impossible, but I'm going to explain how this can happen.